Good to see Lona.
Yeah.
Hi, Lona. You're looking good, Lona.
Thank you. You wouldn't say that if you saw me right now.
Oh, I tried to phone you a week ago, but I guess you were elsewhere recuperating.
Quite home yet.
I'll
Okay.
try and get you today.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got my screen set up. And you should be able to see my notes there on the Bible software. So today we're going to take a look at the terms jealous and jealousy. Okay, and this could be a good study in that it will bring in a number of other words, kind of show that so many of these words, as we try to understand what God is like, are connected with each other. And you have to understand quite a number of them to get the picture right. But this is one that could be difficult and is worth looking at. So first question, is God a jealous God? Any thoughts?
Not in the sense that we think of jealousy.
Okay, not in the sense that we think of jealousy, but in some way he is, perhaps.
Yeah.
The Bible says he is
The Bible says
in
he is.
different places.
Okay, Michael?
I was just going to say essentially the same. Yes, he's jealous for our well-being,
Right.
Okay,
right? He wants us to be living correctly, etc.
yeah, you can be jealous in a good
Looking
way.
up.
Okay,
Yes.
Paul?
If I can remember correctly, I looked at that word jealous one time in the Hebrew, and one of the definitions was zealous,
Yes, okay,
not jealous.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're slightly
So-
different. Yeah, I didn't really include much about zealousness, but there are a few examples. Jehu is one who's described that way. And there was other ones that were pretty zealous, but they were zealous for God's character, even if they didn't do the right things. Here's one description from one study of this term of jealousy. God's jealousy does not have any element of the resentment found in human jealousy. His jealousy is a longing, loving indignation that the object of that emotion is hurting himself or herself by turning from God and his ways. Okay, so it's God's jealousy. The way this explains it is a good thing. So let's see if that's true. Paul?
What is that? ASSL?
That's adult Sabbath school lesson. I didn't get the year, but I saved Sabbath school lessons over a number of years, and I refer to them sometimes when it can be helpful.
Okay.
So it was just on the book of James. So from dictionary.com, jealous is an adjective. It's defined as feeling resentment against someone because of that person's rivalry, success, or advantages, often followed by of. So you're jealous of someone else's new car, jealous of their achievements or their good looks or whatever. They have their definition number 6 from the Bible is intolerant of unfaithfulness or rivalry. And that it says the Lord is a jealous God, which of course is quoted directly from the Bible. What do unfaithfulness and rivalry suggest in that definition?
That the people were unfaithful to God, and
Okay.
they were going after other gods and
Okay.
idols and stuff.
Yeah, faithfulness very much relates to the breaking of a relationship, like adultery, that sort of thing. What does
Lack of
intolerant?
commitment.
Sorry, Axel.
No, I just said a lack of commitment
Okay, lack of commitment.
or an absence of commitment. Sorry.
Yeah. What does intolerant suggest in that?
It sounds like you might have contempt for somebody who has something that you don't have, and you are envious of them because they have it and you don't.
Yeah, in this case, it's they're taking this definition that I read a minute ago from the Bible. So it could be suggesting that God is intolerant. the way it's written there.
Or it could be that other people could be intolerant of unfaithfulness or rivalry on God's behalf. Like
Okay.
they're, I'm trying to think of a biblical example. Well, you know, some of the kings, when they came to the throne, they went around and broke down the high places and destroyed the idols and stuff like that. So
Okay.
in that way, they could be jealous for God's character
Right.
or
Okay.
God's name, I guess.
Good. Webster's 1828 dictionary says suspicious, apprehensive of rivalship, uneasy through fear that another has been withdrawn or may withdraw from one the affections of a person he loves or enjoys some good which he desires to obtain. Another definition is solicitous to defend the honor of, concern for the character of, and this is just what Judy said basically. Okay, so there's a few definitions. So let's look at what the Bible says. Is God jealous? Well, is he a jealous God? Let's read Exodus 34:14.
We waste so much time
No, Michael, thank you.
quoting scripture. We
Read
do.
it.
I'll read it from the screen, although Paul had his hand up. For
Oh,
thou shalt worship no other God. For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. So,
okay, it says he's jealous. It says his
Oh, that's-
name is jealous, and of course we associate name with character. So there's some sense in which he is jealous. Notice, and you'll see this more, I've put in red there, no other God. Okay, so there's a connection in this verse at least with idolatry. Deuteronomy 4 verses 23 to 24. Who has that one?
I do.
Okay, Judy.
Take heed to yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God.
Okay, so once again, he's a jealous God. Paul, in your image there, you're quite low on the screen and quite dark, so I might not be able to see your hand very well. You might adjust your camera or something. Next one is
Okay.
Exodus 20 verses 3 to 5. That's better. Oh, now I can see you. Exodus 20 verses 3 to 5.
Okay.
Mhm.
Axel, please.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me.
Okay, what do those passages, those three passages we read there, have in common besides saying that God is a jealous God? Should be pretty obvious.
It's highlighted in red.
Yeah.
So what is it?
Other gods,
Other
What a
God.
God.
idols.
So in those verses, there seems to be a definite connection between God being jealous and other gods, graven images, idolatry. And that certainly fits with the idea of what we read in the definitions further up of unfaithfulness. And, are we following other gods? That would make him jealous, but hopefully in a good way. So I wrote here, the principle of God's jealousy in scripture is always, and I put a question mark because I haven't checked out every verse, but very often at least, connected to men falling into idolatry. Jealousy only occurs where there is idolatry, and probably idolatry always leads to jealousy. So I've put a little thing on the screen here, idolatry leads to jealousy. Okay, and we'll expand on that
So
as we go.
idolatry by the people leads to jealousy on the part of God.
Right, good. So the passage up here in Exodus 20, where is that from? Besides Exodus 20.
10 Commandments.
It's the 10 Commandments, exactly. So right in the 10 Commandments, we're told that God is a jealous God and told to beware of idols and such things. Evidently, that's kind of important. So I've got here again, Exodus 20, just verse 5. Thou shalt not bow down to them, those graven images, nor serve them. Go ahead, Michael.
Paul had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks. I just was going to ask you if you have any scriptures from James chapter 4.
I don't think so.
Because there's, let me read this. This is James 4, 4 and 5. It has to do with this topic. It says, adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you think that the scripture says in vain, the spirit who dwells in us yearns jealously?
Okay, thanks.
So it's
So I just got some more input there. So in the verse in Exodus 20, verse 5, the word am, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. That word is supplied. You can see it's in italics. I've bolded it too, but it's in italics. It's added. It could actually have the meaning of become. For I, the Lord thy God, become a jealous God when we fall into idolatry. Is kind of the idea. That is, become in the sense of appearing to be or to act in a certain way in the perception of others, because of course God does not what? I'm the Lord, I change not. Okay, he doesn't change. He isn't one thing and then he becomes something else. So it's not that he changes, but he changes, becoming jealous or seen to act in a jealous manner by us. We perceive that of him. Okay, it depends how you define jealous, but we have a certain way in our minds that we think of it. Yeah.
Isn't jealousy an emotion?
Yes.
And our emotions change.
Yes.
And I would suspect, his character doesn't change, but his emotions might change according to the situation.
Okay, good. I think we said last time that we have the capacity to make God happy or sad.
Sure.
So we also then have the capacity to make him jealous. And that's true. It's not a change in his character, it's him reacting to us appropriately. Okay, good.
Paul has his hand up.
Paul.
That's what he's saying in that scripture that I read. People that are idling or worshiping other gods are adulterers and adulteresses, because you're cheating on your husband, your father, your God, your creator.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That the terms adulterer, adulteress implies idolatry. It implies turning from
Mhm.
God to someone else,
Unfaithfulness.
unfaithfulness. Good. Okay.
Faithfulness, correct.
Yeah, certainly fits.
Spirit.
Okay, let's read Genesis 6:8. Paul?
But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord.
Okay. He found grace. Question is, was the grace always there?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. God is graceful. He's full of grace. So what happened to Noah's thinking in his mind then?
He found the grace.
Okay, so he found something that was already there. He perceived that God was full of grace, offering grace. Okay. Let's read 2 Samuel 15:25.
I could read that.
Okay, Dorothy, thank you.
And the king said unto Zadok, carry back the ark of God into the city. I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again and show me both it and his habitation. I
Okay,
don't
thank you.
quite get that.
I'm just going to expand this a little bit here. Okay, easier to read.
Yeah, that's better.
If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, if he can perceive in his mind that God is favorable towards him, because again, the favor is already there, just like the grace is. Okay. God always, doesn't he do this? He always offers grace and favor. Agreed?
Yeah.
He always offers it. And I would say the same is true of God's mercy. Let's read 1 Chronicles 16:34. Michael.
1634, First Chronicles. 34, would it help if I got 34? Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever.
Okay.
Hallelujah.
So how long is God merciful then?
Forever.
Forever. Never stop.
Forever.
Okay, his mercy
Yeah.
endures forever, and his forgiveness, I would say as well. So God is merciful to all, but a person can only experience mercy if they believe God is merciful. Does that make sense? If you
Yeah.
don't believe God is merciful, how can you feel like you receive mercy? Not possible. Let's read a couple of other verses that might help here. Jeremiah 29:11.
I've got it.
Okay.
For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope.
Okay. So God is never sitting there thinking, oh, I'm going to get to punish this guy for this evil thing he did. He's thinking of peace all the time, how to get peace into our lives. Deuteronomy 10:13.
I can read that. To keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command thee this day for thy good.
Okay, so all of God's commandments and statutes, anything he requires of us is always for our good, not his. Okay, we need to recognize that. It's very important. So we can only experience.
It's a mutual.
Go ahead, Michael.
Sorry, Ray, it's a mutual thing. It's not just for our good, it's also for his good as well,
Sure.
right?
For his good.
Peace of mind.
Yeah. For his good, because.
Because we're demonstrating that we are being faithful and obedient to him.
Okay, so what is the good result for him?
Well, it's a two-way thing, isn't it? Spirit works two ways, you know, it's not just a one-way street.
Okay,
It
so
brings him joy.
it makes him happy. It brings glory to him, and that it might attract others to him, perhaps. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we can only experience mercy from God if we believe he is merciful. And that's similar to what other word did I often mention? Something we can only receive if we believe God gives it.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, of course. Yeah.
Goodness,
Forgiveness is
goodness.
translated from different words. It's both given by God and received by us. And if we don't believe he will give it, then we can't receive it.
But he'll give it anyway.
He gives it anyway, but it doesn't affect our minds. It doesn't take away our guilt and shame if we don't realize that we are forgiven.
We don't receive it.
We don't receive it. So our understanding of God and what he is like is very important and has a great effect on us, of course. Let's read Exodus 24 and verse 17. Yes, Lonnie, go ahead.
The sight of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. Is that the one you wanted?
Yes, yes. So what was happening there, let's say, in the minds of the children of Israel?
Well, they were pretty awestruck.
They were awestruck because of
The glory of the Lord.
yeah, that they were seeing, or that they perceived at least. But they perceived it as, it says, devouring fire.
Yeah.
That's something to be a little bit scared of, isn't it?
Yeah, they were frightened.
They were. So what was their reaction? They were frightened. They were quite scared. In fact, they drew away from the mountain. They said, Moses, don't let God speak to us lest we die. You go talk to him. Be our intermediary. So what did Moses do in the very next verse, Exodus 24:18?
So Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
Okay, does it seem that Moses was also afraid?
Doesn't look
Well,
like
he
it.
wasn't afraid to climb the mountain.
No, he
No.
wasn't afraid at all, was he?
Went right up there.
Yep,
He trusted.
he trusted.
He trusted
Right.
God.
So why did the children of Israel have that perception of God?
Well, they didn't have a good connection with him like Moses did.
Okay, they didn't have good connection and
They just
why?
come out of slavery.
Okay, they just come out of slavery. And what did they experience in Egypt there?
Persecution, beating, slavery. Yeah. Well, if they were probably familiar with the Egyptian gods, who were probably nasty.
Okay, so they experienced idolatry there too, even if they didn't all partake in it, it was around them. And I'm sure the Egyptians, like other nations, had this perception that, you know, you got to appease God or he'll come and get you. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, they were indoctrinated into that religion. So that was their understanding.
Sure. Yeah. You're affected by what goes on around you for sure. Okay, so here's Exodus 20, verse 5 again. I just put it on the screen again and put that, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, and I inserted graven images. That's what it is in the context, just to make that connection. And then God becomes a jealous God. So what does God do in reaction to idolatry? From that verse, we've already seen that idolatry leads to jealousy. What can we add to that from that verse? And you can see it on the screen there.
visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children.
Okay, so when there's idolatry, God's reaction is to become jealous. So that's, we would say, his emotion. What does he do? He visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, etc.
Of them that hate me.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Presumably those that love him would not be engaged in this idolatry. So we need to consider the meaning of visiting the iniquity. Now this is where we'll start looking at just briefly at other terms that we've already looked at in many cases, and they're already on my website. In fact, here's the URL for the word visit. And the definition I have for visit in the biblical healing model is the common Hebrew word used is pakad, often meaning to visit, to bless, but at times is clearly stated as visiting to punish. When so used, however, it is punishing in the sense of allowing the natural consequences of wrong actions to occur. So we'll often say God visited Israel for the iniquity or for this or that they did. And it just means he allowed the natural results to happen. Paul, go ahead.
It's interesting, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the third and fourth generation, because in a person's DNA, a lot of us are born with things that we acquired through hereditary processes. So it's interesting that it was done that way, I guess.
Yep, that's exactly right. Through genetics and what they call epigenetics, which is genetic switches are turned off and on basically through our lifestyle. We can't affect our genetics, it's what we're born with, but we can control or have an effect on the expression of those genetics. We can turn certain genes on and off actually. And that's all discovered since I either took any genetics in university. But so Exodus 20 verse 5 defines jealousy as visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. What God is actually doing is his allowing consequences to occur and to be passed down. It's not that he is trying to punish great-great-grandchildren or anything. It's just that he's not limiting the effects of our choices. Okay, so if we do certain things or even live a lifestyle that affects our children and grandchildren because they're around us, he doesn't erase the effects of what we do. In fact, doing that would, in a sense, be limiting our free will. So he does not, but neither does he limit the good effects of the choices we make. We need to keep that in mind. So idolatry leads to jealousy, which leads to visiting the iniquity and allowing consequences to happen. We could even insert in that, I'm not sure to put it here or later, we can insert the word anger, okay? God in anger or wrath does certain things. And again, when you look at anger and wrath, in fact, I've got it down here in the glossary, you can see that it has a different meaning that we commonly associate it with. So what I have here for the biblical healing model for anger or wrath is how God feels and what he does in reaction to man's sinful or distrustful actions. What he usually does is to allow people to have their desire go the way they want, etc. Also giving people over to the consequences of what they have chosen, even if detrimental, with negative effects.
Yes, he set up those rules of cause and effect, and so he pretty well has to let it play out that way, or else he would be accused by the enemy of altering his own rules.
Yes, exactly. And it's important to recognize that he has not set it up so that we only suffer the bad effects of our choices. It works either way. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's read Galatians 6:7.
Michael has it.
Michael.
Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap.
It's really too.
And read 8 as well.
8. For he that sows to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that sows to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap everlasting life.
Okay, good. Okay. So whatsoever we sow, we reap. There's an effect to everything. I just thought of this verse and added it. Proverbs 26:2. Paul?
Like a flitting sparrow, like a flying swallow, so a curse without cause shall not alight.
Okay. So whatsoever a man sows, that shall he reap. But this is just kind of saying it in the opposite way. The curse does not come without a cause. So anything bad that happens to us, there's a reason for it. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not always something we've done.
No,
It could be something somebody else has done.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sin hurts people for
Yeah.
sure. Whether we do it to ourselves.
Like some drunk driver runs over somebody, that's not your fault. You just happen to be in the wrong place.
Right.
That's the
But
wrong
there's a cause for it. For
Yeah.
sure. So jealousy is the visitation of iniquity, which is basically allowing natural consequences to happen. Yeah, I think we'll stop there. It's a minute or two early, but it's a good time to stop and take our little break, and then we'll continue in 10 minutes. How's that?
Okay, you're the boss.
Okay, Lona, we'll call you back.
Yeah, I think I'm going to rest for now.
Okay,
Okay.
so don't call you back. Someone could please read Deuteronomy 32:16-20.
I've got it.
Okay, Judy.
They provoked him to jealousy with foreign gods. With abominations, they provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to demons, not to God, to gods they did not know, to new gods, new arrivals, that your fathers did not fear. Of the rock who begot you, you are unmindful, and have forgotten the God who fathered you. And when the Lord saw it, he spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end will be, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faith.
Okay, so we've got in there the jealousy, and I've highlighted in red again the strange gods, new gods. So there's idolatry happening, but it shows once again that connection between them. However, in this passage, we've got something new here. It says in verse 20, I will hide my face from them. At the cross, Jesus, we understand, experienced the hiding of his Father's face. So Jesus could not see his Father. Why not? And I put see in quotes. It's not necessarily a visible seeing, but why could he not see his Father's face?
Was the burden of the sin.
Okay,
He
because
was carrying all of our sins.
okay.
Did that do it? It made him feel like he couldn't see his Father's sins.
Well, I don't think he could see his
Yeah,
Father's
okay.
face. Any other thoughts? Why?
Because he was sin,
Okay, he was
and
sin.
God does
Um,
cannot. Yeah,
There's different ways
he
of
was made
expressing
sin for
that.
us.
Sorry. I like to think of it as that quite well-known quote he, Jesus, was treated as we deserve, that we might be treated as he deserves. So he was treated as though he was a sinner, which of course he was not. He was not guilty. But the way he was treated, the Father withdrawing from him, or I gotta say this right. I believe the Father was there, but in Jesus' perception, he was not. Okay? The Father was right there, weeping over what was happening to his son, but his son could not perceive that he was there.
Mhm.
Okay?
Wow.
So effectively, God's face, presence was hidden from his son at that time. Okay?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, okay, good. So the hiding, so back in Deuteronomy 32:20, I will hide my face from them. It's not so much that God is putting up a mask, a covering, so much as they could not perceive his presence, his face, his actually favorable towards them face. Okay? The belief that God did it, did something bad to us, effectively hides his face from us. When we say hides his face, in a sense, that's hiding his character. It's us having a wrong perception of his character. Okay? So by having a wrong understanding of what God is like, thinking that he is unforgiving, that he is not merciful, will hide his face. It's hiding what he is really like.
In our understanding.
Right. It's all, in our case, it's all an understanding. We're not actually seeing him. So it's a figurative seeing or a figurative hiding, you can say.
The belief that God, I see it says on the screen, belief that God did it. God did what?
Well,
Or
anything.
anything. Okay.
Anything. Something terrible happens to us. And we say, God did it. I think we talked about this last time or one time recently. God did it, acts of God, and we use different terms like that. If we believe that, it's not a question of seeing or not seeing God physically. If we believe that, then what we're doing is believing that he is harming us, that he's not protecting us. And that effectively hides his face, his true nature and character from us. Let's read 2 Corinthians 3:18.
Good scripture.
Paul.
I'll read that.
Go ahead, Dorothy.
But we all with open face beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord.
Okay. Would anyone like to sort of explain that in their own words, what's going on in that verse?
Yeah, please explain that.
Was that Dorothy?
I says, please explain that. Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain it, or does someone else want to? A glass is what?
A mirror.
A mirror. Okay.
Mirror.
Action.
2 Corinthians.
Anybody want to
3.
take a stab at it? Paul?
Well, by beholding, we are changed because we see how perfect and loving he is, and it's very attractive, and we want to have it and be that way also. So that's how I see it anyway.
Okay, good. So it's that by beholding we are changed kind of idea. Axel, please.
What if our perception of him, our understanding of him is what we see in that glass? How does that impact our change?
Okay, that's actually an important point. It's not just seeing something that's seen with the correct understanding. Okay, because there's lots of people that could, the glory of the Lord, we could say is his character, what he's about, what he does. You can get that by reading the Bible, okay? But if you're reading the Bible with a background of understanding that God is vindictive and out to get you and unforgiving and requiring sacrifices and everything, then that's not going to change you into the true image of God. You're changed into the image that you behold. So the point is, it's not just seeing the Lord through his word even, it's seeing it with the right understanding, through the right lens, we could say. And we've talked before about, how did I term it? Different lenses that we can see God through, different gospel models or whatever. Okay. Now this, in regards to that, this is a very interesting verse, Psalm 18, 25 to 27. Paul.
With the merciful, you will show yourself merciful. With a blameless man, you will show yourself blameless. With the pure, you will show yourself pure. And with the devious, you will show yourself shrewd. For you will save the humble people, but will bring down haughty looks.
Okay, good. The King James, it uses a kind of a strange word, the froward. Paul, yours read shrewd. So verse, it's got merciful, upright, and pure, all good things. And then it's got this froward or shrewd or whatever. So to the good people, let's just generalize it. To the good people, you will show yourself to be good. And to bad or wicked people, you will show yourself in the same way. So we tend to perceive God according to our own characters. And he allows that, okay? He never interferes with our free will, and our free will includes our way of thinking, our perceptions, even of God himself, okay? We tend, I guess another way to put it is, we tend to make God out to be in our own image, which is kind of backwards, isn't it? So if a person is merciful, they will perceive God as being merciful and then be able to receive mercy. Okay, if we perceive God as being unmerciful, then we won't receive it. In fact, I just thought of this verse. Let's go to Genesis. Let's go to Genesis. I'm thinking chapter 4 is where God speaks to Cain after Cain kills his brother Abel.
Verse 13.
Is that the one I want? Verse 13. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Do you want to read that, Paul?
Sure. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear or can be forgiven.
Okay, it can be forgiven. You're reading from a marginal note there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, which is better than the way it just reads in the King James and many other versions. Cain is saying, I can't be forgiven. And of course, we know that God is ever merciful. We've already read that verse in this study. So he did not perceive that God could forgive him. He did not perceive that God was merciful.
Okay.
So in Psalm 18:25, with the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful. Applying that to Cain's case, was Cain merciful towards his brother?
No.
Not at all. He killed him. So we can say, with the unmerciful Cain, you will perceive me as being unmerciful. God could have said it to him like that. That would fit with Genesis 4:13. Okay, hopefully that makes sense there. we perceive God often according to our own characters. And that's why we need to keep looking at the true picture of God. Okay, we need to dig into the Bible and puzzle out some of these words and things and get it right, and hopefully that will have an effect on us. Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy 4, verses 23 and 24. This is a little bit more about allowing consequences. Michael.
Okay. Take heed unto yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make you a graven image or the likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee. The Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. So,
Okay, so that makes the connection again between a jealous God and the graven image. Maybe it doesn't actually say too much about allowing the consequences, but we've seen that already. Okay, let's go now to a kind of an interesting verse or passage. It has to do with jealousy. Numbers 5, verses 13 to 15. Okay, 12 to 15.
Get the context.
You wanna read it?
Okay. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, if any man's wife goes astray and behaves unfaithfully toward him, and a man lies with her carnally, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught. If the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife who has defiled herself, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest. He shall bring the offering required for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley meal, and he shall pour no oil on it and put no frankincense on it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing iniquity to remembrance.
Okay, now take a careful look at that. And do you notice anything different about this passage compared to the other verses we looked at that use jealousy? There's something missing from there.
It's not godly jealousy, it's a spirit of jealousy.
Yeah, that's true. But there's something else that's missing from there that's I pointed out in red, actually, that's in all the other ones. Remember what I had highlighted in red all the time?
Somebody said something.
Michael, did you say something?
I said idolatry, but I don't remember.
Well, no, that's right.
Sorry.
That's right. Idolatry is not in there. Remember, we made the strong connection before between idolatry leads to jealousy. In this case, there's no idolatry, but we're not talking here about godly jealousy, are we?
No.
This is a husband being jealous of his wife, thinking, whether it's true or not, that his wife has gone off into an adulterous relationship. So idolatry does not show up in there. Let's read this next verse here, 2 Corinthians 11:2. I don't think we read that before. Maybe we did, but let's read it. Second Corinthians 11:2. Paul.
For I am jealous for you with godly jealousy, for I have betrothed you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ.
Okay, So that says godly jealousy, implying that there could be a difference between godly jealousy and human jealousy, right?
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So an important point to remember, and I think we've touched on it already, in regard to idol worship or anything else we might do, God always allows choices and honors our free will. Okay, this is a good point to kind of emphasize. So let's go to Joshua 24:15. Joshua 24:15. Paul.
And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Okay, this is spoken, of course, by Joshua. Does that imply allowing free will?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yes.
He doesn't say serve the Lord or else. It's choose you this day.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And God has always allowed free choice. Even if you go back to Adam and Eve in the garden, just by the presence of two trees,
Yeah.
there was a choice. They could choose one or the other.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah. In verse 2 of that chapter, Joshua had reminded them that their forefathers were idolaters. And in recounting his history there, so that's why he comes to verse 15. Now you make the choice. So, but he did remind them that they made the wrong choice initially.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he mentions the gods that your fathers served. Okay.
Yes.
We got the same kind of idea in 1 Kings 18:21. This, of course, is Elijah and the prophets of Baal.
Mhm.
Mm. Yep.
You can read that.
Okay.
And Elijah came to all the people and said, how long will you falter between two opinions? If Yahweh is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him. But the people answered him not a word.
Okay. And what happened after that? So the free choice is implied there for sure. And then what happened?
Well, we had the demonstration with the sacrifices and the prophets of Baal cutting themselves and all that, and God didn't answer by fire. But then when Elijah offered a sacrifice to the true God, Yahweh, the sacrifice was burnt up.
Okay. And then what happened then?
He destroyed the prophets of Baal.
What did the people say after they saw the fire?
Oh yeah, what did they say? I forget. I'm looking for it.
I'm stalling a bit because I don't have a lot of material in here.
Oh, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God.
Okay.
Yahweh, he
No,
is
it
God.
doesn't say in there, but did the prophets of Baal also say the same thing and do the same thing? I don't think there's any indication they
It says
did.
now when all the people saw it, but I'm sure that's the people of Israel and not the prophets.
I would think so. Yeah. And then what did, this is just to make a kind of an extra point that's worth noting. What did Elijah do then? Well, not immediately after. What did he do shortly after in regard to those prophets of Baal who did not choose to follow God?
Killed them all.
He killed them all. This could be another interesting study, but do you suppose that Elijah was a little bit off course there?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
we're reading this verse because we're emphasizing that God allows free choice. He does not pressure us to choose him over Baal. Okay, so then these prophets of Baal choose to continue to go with Baal, and Elijah kills them all. I think Elijah kind of overstepped here a little bit.
Well, I have a question. Were those
Yeah.
prophets of Baal children of Israel? Were they, or were they foreigners?
Israelites.
Good question. Good question.
Because if they were the children of
Thought of
Israel,
that.
then maybe Elijah was more on the right track.
Well,
I don't know.
I would argue that even then he wasn't on the right track, but that's a good question. Now they were serving Jezebel, right?
Yeah, she was a foreigner, wasn't she?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I want to look at that.
Jezebel was the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians.
Okay, there we go. So maybe in that sense, Elijah was a little more justified, but I still would say he overstepped. Anyway, that could be another study. It's very interesting, actually. Okay, let's go on and read. Now, we've read this before, but let's read it again. It's a good verse, and I want to make another point. Deuteronomy 32, 16 to 20. Michael?
They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful, and have forgotten God that formed thee. And when the Lord saw it, he abhorred them, because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be, for they are a very froward generation, children in whom is no faith.
Oh,
Okay,
oh
there's
dear.
that word, froward again.
Perverse minds.
Yeah, perverse, I think, is what Paul read before from his. So hiding his, I'm going to say that hiding his face does not mean God can't see what is going on. How do we know that from that verse?
Yes. Says, I will see.
Yeah, in verse 20, I will see what their end shall be. God's not hiding his face in the sense he's turned away and he can't see. So who is it that can't see?
Those people.
Those people. So his face is hidden from them. They can't see his face, but he can see what's going on with them. Okay. So how does that happen? I mean, they weren't blinded, were they? In what sense did he hide his face from them?
Removes his protection.
Removed his protection. That might be the result in that end that comes to them. But there's another sense.
Well, they, by their sin, they kind of grieve away the Holy Spirit, and it takes a bit of effort to get back to the relationship if you're on the wrong track. They're not seeking him and to find him when they search for him with all their hearts like they should be.
Yeah, okay, that's actually a really good verse. I should have that in here. You shall find him.
You shall seek him and find him when you search with all your hearts.
Rather than money.
I forget what that is.
Yeah, I'll find
Jeremiah
it.
somewhere.
So if they're not seeking him, they're not going to see his face. And again, they're not going to understand his character is really what it's talking about. Okay. And he allows that to happen. He does not force himself upon them in any way. He's always a gentleman. Okay. But there's another way in which God hides his face, I believe. So the sense we're understanding now is he hides his face in the sense they can't see him because their ideas of him are wrong, their perceptions are wrong, so they can't correctly discern his character. In that sense, his face is hidden from them. But I believe there's another way in which God hides his face. Can anyone think what that might be?
I'm thinking.
Okay, I won't hold it too long. Could it be that hiding his face rather than turning away in anger means this, as illustrated in this image on the screen here?
He's crying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, there's other verses in all their afflictions, he was afflicted, and I think there's other verses too. He could be hiding his face in the sense that his in tears.
Yeah.
When we hurt, he hurts, right? And I'd just like to, let's read a couple of verses now. I just want to show a couple minutes of a video here that I think illustrates quite well this understanding of God hiding his face. So let's first of all read Genesis 43, 29 to 31.
I could read that.
Hey, Dorothy.
And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your younger brother of whom ye spake unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep. And he entered into his chamber and wept there. And he washed his face and went out and refrained himself and said, Set on bread.
Okay, what's the setting here? Do you remember the story?
He's crying.
Crying because
because he's seeing his family and they don't know him.
right, good. So this is Joseph after he was sent into slavery in Egypt, and then he eventually became the governor of all of Egypt, and he was the one doling out the saved up grain because there was a drought, and his brothers came to buy grain, and through a number of events it came to this point just before he revealed himself to his brothers. Now I just want to show about a couple of minutes of this video. I remember this story very well because this is my favorite video by far. I watch it every year when Judy goes off camping with her sisters. Okay, hold on.
He who guides us on the road of life.
Louder.
That's Benjamin.
Yes, Master. And he sends you these gifts as homage. So this is the brother of whom you spoke. Benjamin, Master. How is it, Master, that you could speak up? Have you been to our land? God be gracious to us. Was I wrong to ask the Master how he came to speak our tongue? The Master has traveled right. He understands a great deal. just going to put these doors about that. It's heavy. Primarily, I divined
Hmm.
the order of your birth by the magic of
Okay, can you see see why I used that? Illustrated him weeping, his bowels of compassion were moved, or however it might be expressed. Anyway, that's a good movie if you ever want to watch that. It really illustrates the character of God, I think, very, very well. Okay. So that's all I had, actually, as far as I got. Sometimes, yeah, we get through it quickly or whatever. So we've looked at godly jealousy and understanding that's different from our jealousy. And really what it is God is concerned, always is concerned more for us than for himself. And when we become engaged in idolatry, it's not so much that he's offended because or jealous of the other God, you know, this other God is getting more attention than I am. It's not that so much as God is the only source of life and blessing for us. And if we disconnect ourselves from him by depending on turning to other gods, then we're the ones that are going to suffer. And I mentioned that verse, in all their affliction, he was afflicted. He hurts for us, not for himself. Okay, that's really what's going on, I believe, in God's thinking. Okay, any thoughts or anything about that?
Interesting.
Paul.
Good.
I wanted to bring up that verse or that story about Cain that you mentioned. And it's something that I was thinking about when I was driving on why was Cain's sacrifice not pleasing to our Father. And then it dawned on me that even though we have free will, he did not have the free will to make a sacrifice of his choosing, it seems, because he didn't give a first fruit. At least the scripture doesn't say he gave a first fruit, and his brother gave a firstborn. So I think that's why his sacrifice was not as pleasing to the Father as Abel's.
Okay. Of course, what both of them were directed to sacrifice had a certain purpose, didn't it? They were meant to sacrifice, bring a lamb as a sacrifice. And why that compared to, you know, zucchini and tomatoes or whatever he brought?
Because it was to represent the Savior.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, he did have free will. You're right. He was directed to bring one type of offering and not another, but he was free to bring it or not. And he chose not to. Okay.
Yeah.
Axel.
So a point that we touched on, Christ on the cross and God the Father hiding his face from him. There wasn't a how do I pose this? Christ knew the Father. He knows his character. He is God. So he has that relationship. I'm trying to understand. I know that he became sin for us, right? But is it because of his condition, him taking on, you know, everyone's sin, that God arbitrarily, the God the Father arbitrarily hid as it were? Was it a physical hiding? Because I, is it that the sin was so much, so intense on Christ that he could not perceive his Father's presence, in as much as the Father was really there?
Okay, couple of points here. When we say he became sin for us, I think if Gary was here today, and he did email me and said he'd be here next week, but he was going to be out of town or something this week, so he didn't join us. He would have said something about that. And what I would say is, about him, about God, about Yeshua taking our sins for us. In Ezekiel 18:4, it says, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. Okay? And there's other verses in that same chapter, and we have to read through it maybe. The father shall not die because of the sin of the son, and vice versa. I think it says,
Yeah, I remember we touched
yeah,
on
here it is, verse
on that.
19. Does not the son bear the iniquity of the father? Is that what I want? Okay, here, verse 20 is a good one. The son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, neither shall the father bear the iniquity of the son. Basically, it's saying, one way you can express it is that sin is not transferable. Okay, I don't believe that guilt for sin is transferable, or that the Bible teaches that. When it says he became sin for us, go to Philippians 2. I think we can see this as a sense in which Yeshua became sin for us. Okay, if you go to, well, let's read verses, say, 5 to 8 would be good. Philippians 2, 5 to 8. Somebody have that?
Let this mind, yeah, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men.
And one more.
To verse 8. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross.
Okay, so when we hear it expressed that he became sin for us, could it be in this sense that he became or took on sinful flesh as we have? In my understanding, that's the sense in which he became sin for us. He was made like us. He could be tempted like us, and he overcame as we could overcome if we depended on his Father like he did. So he did not have the guilt of sin transferred onto him. He did die for the sins of the world, but not in the sense of paying a price, like an appeasement type price to God. He definitely paid a big price. We'll say sometimes that a person, a soldier or someone paid the ultimate price. They gave their life. But it's not a price in the sense of buying off God to appease his wrath. Okay? His death was to show us the effects of sin and the separation from God that it causes. Paul?
I think the tabernacle kind of gives us an explanation too, because the Holy of Holies, the priests were only allowed to go in there once a year on the Day of Atonement. And that's because I think that we're defiled by our sin, and our Father cannot be in the presence of us when we're defiled that way, that we have to be cleansed to be in his presence. And I think Yeshua on the cross was, I guess, defiled. And so in that sense, God couldn't be,
Yeah.
there. I don't know exactly how to word it, but it's
Okay,
kind of how I see it.
yeah, Michael?
There was some blackness, wasn't there, for 3 hours or so?
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's reminiscent, is it not, of what happened in Horeb when the commandments were given?
Mhm.
Thick blackness, clouds, all sorts of lightning, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The Father was there. Yeshua was there. I tend to think the Father does not abandon us. I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Right.
And so I think he was there. Personally, I think he was dying along with his son.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Deity didn't die, but it sank. But so I think the Father was there. Just why Yeshua felt so abandoned. Well, look how we feel. We can't even handle the sins of our just one ourselves.
Yeah.
He's got them all there. So yeah, I can understand that how we would feel a little bit alone, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think the Father was there.
Yeah, I absolutely think the Father was there. His presence was veiled. I don't know that Christ ever, during his 33 years on earth, physically with his eyes saw his Father. Okay, he had a connection through the Holy Spirit that he communicated, and he did what his Father told him, and in prayer he connected all the time. But I don't think he ever saw him. No one around the cross saw the Father. So to Yeshua's senses, his Father had abandoned him. There was no connection. The telephone line was cut or whatever. But by faith, and this is where he gained the victory, by faith, he understood that his Father was faithful and understood what his Father was like. And that's how he overcame. And that's how we can overcome, because I believe at the end of time, there will come a time when we're cut off from every earthly resource. It looks like God has abandoned us, yet we can know by faith, from understanding this example and other scriptures, we can understand by that faith that God is still with us, that he will see us through. It all comes down to our faith, I think. So Axel, I hope that helps a bit. I don't know if you've heard it that way before, but it's a good question about him becoming sin for us and what's involved in that. Something to contemplate for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
One thing that a clue to how he was possibly feeling is Hebrews 12:2, where it says, looking unto Yeshua, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So maybe his own feelings were, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and verse 3 is good too, Paul.
Yes.
There was another.
You want me to read it?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls.
I just brought up, that's not what I was looking for, but in Jonah 2:6, I'll just put this on the screen here. Can someone read that verse, please? I'm gonna look for another one. Someone have that? Jonah 2:6.
In there.
I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God.
Okay, thank you.
It sounded very discouraged.
Yeah. There's another, I'm just trying to find it, but there's another place in Psalms or Proverbs that sounds very similar to that. And it's basically describing Yeshua's emotional state on the cross. And it sounds very similar to that. Like it's like a hopeless situation.
Psalm 22.
That's not what I'm thinking of, but that would be helpful. Now I'll read a few verses there. Can you find me?
Found it. Well, he's.
Just to I hope I can paraphrase what you said earlier, Ray. What you stated was that our sins were imputed to Christ, but Christ's death was not an appeasement, Christ's sacrifice was not to appease God, in that God is not one who, as it says, sacrifice and burnt offerings thou wouldest not, but a body, he's not,
Desire.
he does not find glory in the death of anyone.
Right.
Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's lots of verses about, God did not do, Psalm 40 verse 6, I think, and there's other ones. God did not desire sacrifices and offerings.
Yeah.
It was never his plan A. And, how can we think that God's plan was to have his son treated like he was and nailed to a cross and everything? That was never his plan A. That was something that became necessary. And that's a whole nother topic that maybe we'll look at a bit later. It wasn't.
But the law itself, the law itself, because of transgression, death came. So hence Christ paid the penalty that we would have taken on, but it's really because of our sins.
Yeah. We just have to avoid thinking of it as appeasement to God. That's an important thing.
No, I don't see it as that. No.
Okay.
I don't see it as.
Yeah, it has to do with our concept of justice. Okay. We feel, and I think this started with Satan, that every sin must be punished. That's one concept of justice, that every sin has to be punished. But God is merciful. He does not need to himself personally punish sin. The wages of sin is death. Those wages are paid by sin itself, not independently by God. It's all consequences. So I think we're getting it. We'll explore that more maybe another time, but this little extra I think has been good to explore that. So Paul, I'm going to call you Gracie one of these times, but go ahead.
Okay, I answered to almost anything.
Okay.
I was just going to say that the beautiful thing about it all is that he conquered death, and by his actions, we have been given the gift of eternal life.
Yes.
Amen.
And so it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay, if there's no other thoughts or whatever, we'll wrap up here. So every week I kind of by about Wednesday or so, I kind of take a look at my list of words and I pick a topic for the week and then look at it a bit and gather material. And then by Friday evening, I'm hard into it, trying to put something together. But I'm open to suggestions.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, if anyone
Much
has
appreciated.
suggestions of topics, I'd certainly consider those as well. But if I'm not getting them, then I'm just going to keep picking topics. And basically, I'm doing it this way. You know, I think it provides meaningful material. Plus, it helps me to build this glossary that I'm working on. So, thank you very much, everyone. And we'll just have
Thank you.
Thank you.
we'll just have a word of prayer to close.